The only way to have hope and resilience is both to know your own power, but also to have solidarity with those who are going through the experience and know the truth. I've just written a new book, which should be out by the end of this year. And I call it The Nature of Nature, because there's such confusion about how nature works. And the subtitle is The Metabolic Disorder of Climate Change. Because also on climate change, there's so much anti-scientific analysis. So simple issue. In a complex living organism, it doesn't have only one parameter. Most people die. If you look at images around you, most people are dying of flooding. It's water. It's that breakdown of the hydrological cycle. But we only look at temperature, you know? So I'm trying to address the whole system, particularly the living earth. My own experience of climate change is particular disasters which show you how it comes in unpredictable ways and intense ways. So in 1999, there was a super cyclone in Orissa, which is the Bay of Bengal in the east of India. And according to people's estimates, between 20 to 30,000 people were killed. That's when the seeds we had saved for salt tolerance became very useful, because that's my main work, saving seeds, and we could distribute it. In 2013, so I'm from the Himalaya. My ecological life began with the Chipko movement. I became an ecologist because I saw a forest disappear. And then I became a volunteer for the Chipko movement, even while I was doing my PhD in Canada in quantum theory. Everything that has caused ecological disasters in the past, deforestation, road building, mining, every one of these activities is getting accelerated. And with climate change is becoming more intense. So 2013, we had a disaster in our region on a tributary of the Ganges, which is called Mandakini. It originated, all our rivers, like the rivers here, I came along the Rhone when I was coming from Geneva. And the Rhone begins in the Alps and then goes all the way to the Mediterranean. So the Mandakini joins the Ganges, begins with the glacier. Climate change is already melting glaciers in the Alps, in Argentina, in Himalaya. And these melting glaciers are forming lakes. Glaciers should be snow. There should be no water. When they melt, they become lakes. And on 16th and 17th of June 2013, we had such intense rain. That is another aspect of climate change that doesn't get talked about enough. Intense rainfall in a short period of time. Monsoon used to be a distributed rain, low velocity. But now it comes in 16, 17, so much rain came. Began with the glacial lake, which had been blocked by debris, but now this debris was washed away. So that whole pilgrim center called Kedarnath got wiped out. They're building dam on dam on dam on the Ganges River. They're planning 500 dams so the river won't flow. But these dams or hydroelectric projects are being built by blasting the mountains. And the mountains are already young. Himalaya is very young. It's not like the Alps. So when these explosives are destroying the mountains, and that heavy rain comes, and there's dam building, and when they're building dams like 40 kilometers of a tunnel, all of that waste goes into the river. And when the rain comes, with all that debris piled up in the river base, the river level that year rose by 40 meters. Villages were washed away. Bridges were washed away. Roads were washed away. we helped. There was no way to communicate. Children were walking. They used to walk from here across a bridge to the town where the school was. Now this bridge is washed away. So the kids are walking 4 hours where there's still a bridge down the stream to their school and walking back 4 hours. Every day they're spending 8 hours. And the women said, please do something. So we actually built a ropeway for the kids to cross. In 2021, another dam that had weakened the whole mountain, in fact, the home of Chipko, where Chipko movement started. The dam had already weakened the mountains. Climate change made the glacier melt. The flooding destroyed the dam and destroyed the mountain. So these are everyday experiences for us. The disasters of a mega kind. So the intensity of extreme events is definitely increased, and we monitor it. And next year I'm going to do something very bold. I'm so fed up of denialism, and I'm also fed up of computer models. What I want is people to be equipped. So we work with women to save seeds into organic farming. Next year, I'm going to work with them to be climate monitors themselves. So they can measure how instead of a 2-inch rain, they had a 20-inch rain. They will have the rain gauges. And they will just also be prepared, with strategies for resilience. So I think the climate debate is very lopsided. Like I said, there's so many parameters to any living system, and now we only think of temperature. But secondly, it's also lopsided because just very few people are engaged in the discussion, whereas it's affecting everyone, particularly those who have not contributed to it. So to me, this is a very big issue of environmental justice. The first is, of course, we know that the cause is 200 years ago, industrialism based on fossil fuels. We need to shift from there because most of the world was not in that situation. It began with England, and then with oil, it began with America. The whole world was pushed into copying them when we have so many other ways of non-fossil fuel ways. I'll give you a very simple example. So the fossil fuel system of agriculture is chemical industrial farming, because every chemical in farming, whether it's synthetic fertilizers or pesticides or herbicides like ground, they're all made from fossil fuels. Their raw material is fossil fuels. And the alternative to this is ecological agriculture with biodiversity. So you don't need fossil fuels. And our work in Navdanya has shown that, in fact, when you intensify biodiversity, when they say intensive, they mean only chemicals. But you can intensify biodiversity. When you intensify biodiversity, we can feed 2 times the world population, solve the climate problem, address the hunger problem, but with it address the water problem, because most of the water is disappearing because of industrial farming. Uses 10 times more water. Just look at the maps. Wherever industrial agriculture and commercial agriculture came, lakes dried up. Lake Chad dried up. One after the other, lakes dried up. The way to regenerate water is to do organic farming. The way to rebuild biodiversity is to protect biodiversity. The way to address climate change is address the sequestration by plants who do photosynthesis and soil. The data's there. In 10 years, with 10% farms organic in the world, we can totally solve the climate havoc. It is bringing hope to the young generation. Wherever young people are able to listen to the data, the research, the practice, and learn. That's why I offer a course every year called Return to Earth for young people to have hope. Because the message is constantly, young people, you don't matter. Your future is closed. It's in our hands. You can't do anything. Yeah? And hope comes from doing things. But the beauty of every problem is the same systems cause the climate problem, the same systems cause the biodiversity problem, cause the hunger and malnutrition problem, they cause the disease problem, they cause the unemployment problem, they cause the hopelessness problem. The same systems that work with the earth in harmony with the earth rebuild biodiversity and regenerate biodiversity. They end the climate catastrophe, which is a buildup of pollution. Climate change is a pollution problem. Emissions are a pollution issue. Get rid of it. And on the other hand, the past pollution, the plants with their green leaves can suck out with photosynthesis, put it back into the soil. Between plants and soil, we've got a solution where the data is now showing 10%, 10 years. We can address it. So hope is not how would I call it? Hope is not something you buy in a supermarket. And hope is not something, it's not a product. Hope is cultivated by your doing. You cultivate hope. It's an active. Well, first of all, what we see, and which we're always made to look like, here's an inevitable trend. Here's technology. And it is a distortion for two reasons. First, technologies are tools. Every society has had technology. Second, tools of transformation nature has those tools. So I always say photosynthesis is the highest technology in the world because it takes carbon dioxide with the sun, transforms it into molecule of life, carbohydrate, and into oxygen that we breathe. That's the technology. But we made ourselves blind to thinking, not recognizing nature's technologies. And my new book is about this. And second, ignoring people's technologies. Ecological agriculture is people's technology. It's a technology. It's a technology of how you renew your soil fertility, not by putting synthetic fertilizers that kill the soil organisms, but allowing the soil organisms to evolve. These are technologies. So the powerful use their tools of domination and say this is the only technology. So it's only now in these last 10, 20 years where the tech giants call their technology technology. And they make it look like only they have the technology. But first of all, in a period of survival and crisis and ecological crisis, we need technologies that heal the earth and regenerate the earth. We don't need new tools of surveillance, appropriation. The three things that went wrong with the elite technology, and no one has analyzed this better than Gandhi. He wrote a little book called Hind Swaraj, Freedom for India. This is when he was fighting against apartheid in South Africa. And he used to travel back and forth on the ship to England. And he wrote this book on one trip. And he said, when my hands used to get tired, when my right hand got tired, I'd write with my left. He wrote it on one trip. It's called India's Freedom, basically. It's a technology dialogue. Brilliant. It is brilliant. Because he's analyzing the technologies of that time, which is the textile factories. Yeah. So denying nature her technology, denying societies their technologies, is what I call technological apartheid. It's an apartheid. You say, mine is technology. What I have is knowledge. Mine is science. You don't have knowledge. I'm human. I'm white. You're black. You're subordinate. So apartheid was always about separation and superiority. So it's got into the technology. Now, not only have I studied physics, but when I returned to India after doing my PhD, I said, they keep saying the more science technology a society has, the less poverty it will have. And I said, look, I said, the bigger the trawler comes, the poorer the fishermen get. The more the chemicals are added, the poorer the farmers get. So what is this relationship of science, technology, and poverty? So I decided to go to the Indian Institute of Management and study on science, technology, policy. And I realized that there are two ways technology is used as a tool. First, more powerful instruments of extraction are used. You put a trawler in the sea, you'll take out all the fish. You put fertilizers, you'll destroy the soil. It'll need more water, you'll suck out every drop of water, the neighbors won't have water. Every one of their tools of sophisticated technology is better in extraction. And the second is they always have a blind eye to the alternatives existing. And I've seen it with seeds, agriculture. Seeds, we've saved seeds. We're always told, without GMOs, we won't be able to feed the world. Our native seeds have 150 to 200% more vital nutrients. In nutrients, they produce much more, but no one looks at nutrients, you just wait. So you look at the long thing. So the technology discussion will be where people will find ways to cultivate hope by looking at other technologies, as well as understanding the control mechanism. Because in effect, digital technologies have only one objective: extract and control. They made the same artificial drugs and they made the same artificial agrochemicals. Because there has been intense censorship on the impact of these two poisons on our health. Any scientist who has worked on how toxics cause cancer, this much we know: 5% cancers are genetic, 95% come from the environment and these poisons we're using. The WHO, International the Cancer Research Wing of WHO, did the study, peer-reviewed study, on all the impacts of glyphosate and said it's a carcinogen. That's what then triggered case after case in America. And Bayer started to lose. But immediately America stopped funding WHO so that such research wouldn't be done. My own sister is a doctor, and she has fought against the big pharma. And there are people whose lives have been taken for showing the impacts of these drugs. But not only is big pharma and big ag and big poison the same industry, they all have the same raw material. And it's not an accident that Rockefeller, which controlled Standard Oil and was a monopoly on oil, in those days pushed to declare homeopathy illegal in America, pushed to declare herbal medicines illegal, so that only the fossil drugs. I think we should start using the term fossil chemicals in industrial farming and fossil medicines of allopathy, which have unknown impacts. And because the censorship has been much more intense. Here, I was in France once. There was a doctor who was treating autistic kids with a shift in diet. His license was taken away. You can't talk about diet and autism. We are part of nature, and every harm we do to nature, we are also doing to ourselves. And now the reason I've called my new book The Metabolic Disorder of Climate Change is because I want people to look at metabolic disorders that have impacted our health. Every disease has its roots in metabolic disorder. And doctors are now saying diabetes, high blood pressure, cancer, they're all metabolic disorders. The functioning of our body has been disrupted by poisons and industrial food and ultra-processed food. And that's why those who are pushing artificial food as a climate solution, not only is it not a climate solution because it'll have 25 times more emissions, and emissions is the real issue on climate, but if ultra-processed food has caused 75% chronic diseases, what will ultra-processed food from labs do if that's our diet? That's why, for ecological reasons and our health reasons, for the integrity of our body and the integrity of the earth, we need to wake up to the abusive power of big pharma and big ag, which is the same. I just call them the poison cartel. It's the same poison cartel. First, we have internalized the industrialization of our bodies. So we don't see. And the second is the censorship in the medical field has been very intense. The difference between the medical field and agriculture is scientists in Sri Lanka showed that glyphosate is a cancer. So somewhere here and there, But Big Pharma is so organized as a criminal gang. I mean, we've watched it. We've watched it now. And there was a new study that it was heartbreaking because I lost friends. I lost old friends. All the old people died during COVID. And now it's coming out. Old people had wealth of about $600 trillion. They were the pensioners, they had the wealth, they had the homes. They were all put into these old care homes. I was actually on a European tour when the lockdown was announced, and I had to rush back to India. And the cover story of the New York Times, which is the only time when I read all these newspapers, the cover story of New York Times had an article that it's time now to decide who will live and who will die. And the old people should die because they're useless now, but they have lots of wealth. And there was a medical journal that published an article at that time. Look for it, you'll find it. The case for killing Granny. The case for killing Granny. Yeah? So I said one is we've absorbed the paradigm, being indifferent to our body. And then there's this great fact where doctors are supposed, and the health industry is supposed to be taking care of us. They've become the biggest threat to human life. So, I was here in France in 2015 for the climate summit. And the climate summit showed me two things. One was, I've been in the UN conferences since they started, since the Earth Summit in 1992. Been part of the negotiations. They've been governments, UN is governments. First time in Paris, Bill Gates was on the stage with heads of state, Bill and Zuckerberg. And we actually did a post to I rang up my son and just told him this is happening, and he immediately did a post and sent it back to me. He said, distribute this. And then around that time, the talk on Monsanto being bought by Bayer was starting. We were planning a Monsanto tribunal, which we did in The Hague. So I decided to do a book to explain what was Bill Gates' role and how did Bayer buy Monsanto. And in that analysis, my son went into deep, deep, deep sources. He wrote the book with me. It's here. It's here in the book. And it's first time, I think anywhere in the world it was found, that actually all the corporations, that Bayer bought Monsanto. Vanguard and BlackRock did a musical chairs. Because we had a global movement on millions against Monsanto. People were waking up to Monsanto. So they had to make the name disappear. And then they kept saying aspirin maker, aspirin medicine maker, aspirin maker. No. They were making poisons in Hitler's Germany. And they've continued Monsanto's work. They haven't stopped it. So yeah, this is the work we have to do. We'll get this toxic greed out of destroying the earth and our bodies and our communities. And our democracy, key issue. Because they can only function by destroying democracy and knowledge.